Imagine living a life filled with ideas, creativity, and endless dreams, yet feeling as if invisible hands keep you from ever touching reality. You move through days like an unfinished story, pages fluttering but never turning. What if that struggle wasn't laziness or fear, but a deep archetype whispering from the unconscious? Tonight we descend into the mind of Carl Jung to meet the being he called Puer Aeternus, the eternal child. And before this journey ends, you may discover that this child lives inside you. The eternal child is the dreamer who never lands. They crave freedom, thrill, and infinite possibility. They are the artist, the visionary, the restless wanderer who believes that tomorrow will finally begin the real story. This archetype glows with curiosity and hope. It paints the world with colors that adults have forgotten to see. But beneath that brilliance hides a quiet fear, the terror of growing up. To the eternal child, responsibility feels like a cage, and commitment like surrender. They chase beginnings, avoid endings, and call it staying open. But what they truly fear is the gravity of becoming. Jung saw this not as immaturity, but as a spiritual imbalance, a refusal of the psyche to root itself in time. And in our modern age, where screens promise eternal novelty and culture worships youth like a god, this archetype isn't rare. It's everywhere. It scrolls, it dreams, it plans, but it rarely acts. There's a strange sadness that follows the eternal child. It comes when the fantasy begins to fade, when dreams no longer protect you from the mirror of real life. You wake up one day and realize that potential has an expiration date, and that's when the shadow emerges. Jung taught that every light has a shadow, and the brighter the dream, the darker the denial behind it. The shadow of the eternal child is dependency. It clings to comfort, to others, to the illusion that someone else will fix the story. It avoids the risk of failure by never finishing the work. And so, freedom becomes another form of imprisonment, a gilded cage built from imagination itself. If you've ever felt trapped in your own potential, that endless loop of, I could be great if I just, then you've met this archetype. It's seductive, poetic, and quietly self-destructive. Look around. Our entire culture feeds the eternal child. We are told to chase every impulse, to avoid discomfort, to reinvent ourselves endlessly. We change jobs, relationships, and identities, searching for a version of life that finally feels effortless. But nothing lasts, because the eternal child is terrified of roots. To grow is to choose, and to choose means letting go of infinite options. A loss the eternal child cannot bear. So we remain suspended in a digital adolescence, collecting experiences instead of wisdom, followers instead of foundations. Jung warned that this imbalance would breed emptiness, a generation of souls bright on the surface, but hollow underneath. Yet there is hope, because the eternal child is not a curse, it's a beginning. Its fire is pure imagination, and when guided, it can illuminate the path to purpose. But to do that, we must confront its shadow. We must look at the parts of ourselves that fear commitment, the parts that would rather dream than do, and say, enough. This is where the true journey begins, the descent into the self. In the next chapter, we'll step deeper into Jung's labyrinth to learn how to integrate the eternal child without destroying its light. Because only by grounding our dreams can we finally make them real. So stay close. The mind has more stories to tell. Creation is both a blessing and a curse. Once the eternal child learns to shape reality, something new awakens inside. A force that hungers for meaning, but also for power. This is the creator archetype, born from the ashes of innocence. But like all fire, it can warm or it can burn. Every creator begins with pure intent, to give life to what only they can see. They want to own what they've made, to be seen, to be remembered. Carl Jung warned that when the ego identifies with the creative force, it starts believing it's a god. And that belief is the beginning of destruction. The eternal child who never wanted to grow up now becomes the adult who cannot let go. The same innocence that feared death now fears insignificance. And in that fear, the flame starts to consume the soul that lit it. Every light casts a shadow. For the Creator, that shadow is pride. The subtle voice whispering, "You are the source," but you are not. You are the channel, the bridge between what is seen and what is unseen. Jung described this danger as inflation of the self. When the artist, the thinker, or the visionary forgets their limits, their creation turns poisonous. It becomes propaganda, obsession, control. The real creator must remember the humility of the child, the willingness to wonder, to listen, to serve something greater. Because creation without surrender is just domination in disguise. So what does it mean to create without being consumed? It means to stand between heaven and earth, to hold imagination in one hand and truth in the other. It means to become a vessel, not for fame, not for validation, but for meaning itself. The mature creator doesn't chase attention. They chase depth. They create because the act itself is holy, because something inside them needs to be born, even if no one ever claps for it. This is how the eternal child finally becomes whole, by realizing that creation is not about control, it's about communion, a dialogue between the human and the divine. And in the end, when the noise fades, what remains is not the applause, but the echo of truth. The eternal child has become the creator, and the creator has become the witness. No longer trapped by time, success, or validation, but awake in the quiet, knowing that to create is to live twice. Jung once wrote, "The purpose of life is not happiness, but wholeness. And wholeness is born when innocence meets wisdom, when imagination meets discipline, and when the fire of creation is held, not by fear, but by love." So if you are listening to this now, and you've ever felt like the world doesn't see your potential, remember this: the child inside you is not gone. It's waiting for you to grow strong enough to protect its light. That is how the eternal child becomes eternal, not by staying young, but by becoming complete. This was The Creator and the Flame, the final act in our journey through the eternal child. If this story spoke to something deep inside you, don't forget to follow, because in the next episode, we'll explore the dark side of the healer and why sometimes saving others means losing yourself. Until then, stay aware, stay curious, and never stop facing the shadows within. In every story of awakening, there comes a moment when the dreamer must face the mirror. After wandering through endless possibilities, the eternal child finally sees the cost of staying young forever. The cost is meaning. Carl Jung called this turning point individuation, the birth of a whole self from the fragments of fantasy. It's not a rejection of youth, but it's transformation into purpose. To begin healing, the eternal child must do the hardest thing imaginable: look directly at the shadow it created. This shadow isn't evil. It's the pain we've ignored, the fear of failure, the terror of responsibility, the silent grief of unrealized potential. Jung believed that repression turns fear into a monster, but when we face it, the monster becomes a messenger. The eternal child learns that responsibility is not a cage, it's a doorway. Through it, imagination finally meets reality. You cannot create a masterpiece if you refuse to touch the clay. Dreams need weight. Without that weight, they float away like smoke. Integration is an alchemy of opposites. It's the child meeting the adult, the dream meeting the duty. Jung wrote that the gold is in the dark. Only by entering what we fear can we reclaim the energy trapped inside it. The eternal child carries divine imagination, but without maturity, that divinity burns instead of builds. So, integration means teaching the dreamer how to act, to take one spark of imagination and shape it into something solid. This is the moment when fantasy turns into creation, when the artist stops chasing inspiration and starts crafting meaning. When freedom becomes discipline, and discipline becomes freedom. In our era of instant everything, patience feels outdated. We want transformation in a single click. But the psyche doesn't move at digital speed. It grows like a tree, slow, silent, alive. To integrate the eternal child, we must relearn patience. We must fall in love with process again. Because the true measure of freedom is not how many paths you can walk, but how deeply you walk the one that's yours. Every decision roots the soul a little deeper into the world, and with each root, the branches of the imagination reach higher toward the light. When the eternal child finally grows, it doesn't disappear. It evolves. Its curiosity becomes wisdom. Its playfulness becomes creativity. Its longing becomes love for life itself. This is not the death of youth, it's its coronation. The child becomes the guide, the visionary who now walks with both wonder and will. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that is the destiny of the eternal child, to stop running from the world and start shaping it. But there is one more step, because even when we find balance, the psyche keeps shifting. In the final chapter, we'll uncover what happens when the eternal child becomes the creator, and how that transformation can either build a soul or burn it. The journey isn't over, it's only beginning.